Hello and welcome back. My name is Jack B. and as always, thank you for viewing my video. This is part two of migrants and immigration. I'm not sure how the authorities were able to come up with the number of unauthorized immigrants here in America. I have found it extremely difficult to find the number of people who are in the U.S. illegally. The numbers I have found only confirm the numbers of illegal aliens based upon encounters at the border. The encounter number I have is 11 million people. The period of time for this number is from October of 2019 to June of 2024. But I'm suspicious of this number because the time frame is basically a democratic time period. The number is reported to come from border agents' reports. The Migration Policy Institute estimated by mid-2023 there were 13.7 million unauthorized immigrants in the U.S., although I'm not sure how they calculated that huge number. Our federal government did nothing but enable the number of illegal immigrants to grow unchecked. Regardless of why the federal government allowed this to happen, and regardless of why the immigrants are here, there are many unauthorized people residing here in the United States. As previously mentioned, we had plenty of policies and laws in place that should have been enforced, and we had the people to enforce them. It appears our elected leadership were more focused and concerned with the few special people rather than the many, which are most of American citizens. To gain a different perspective, I stepped back for a moment and looked at the history of the Mexican migrant worker over the last 80 years. What I found is interesting. In 1942, tens of thousands of American farm workers entered the military or went to work in factories manufacturing wartime materials. This left a huge gap in farm workers available to work in the fields. From 1942 through 1964, approximately 22 years, the U.S. government recruited Mexican farmhands to work the fields. Approximately 4.6 million workers crossed the border to participate in that program. I couldn't find out how many stayed or how many returned to Mexico, but it doesn't really matter because in 1986, Congress passed a new immigration law, which in part pardoned millions of undocumented and illegal immigrants in the United States. The 1942 program benefited the U.S. tremendously. As I understand it, the program was stopped in 1964 for two basic reasons. The first was because some Americans thought the migrants were taking jobs away from citizens, and the second, some Americans didn't want the migrants draining the funding from public aid. I need to inject here the fact that if somebody is working and paying taxes, then they are contributing to the American cause. There may have been more reasons to stop the program, but they aren't clearly published. During the 60s, domestic workers failed to replace the migrants in the field, so the government tried to recruit high school boys to fill the positions. Only 3,300 signed up for the program, and they all eventually dropped out of the program due to poor meals, poor living conditions, and the brutal working conditions in the field. 2011, to comply with H-2A visa regulations, the North Carolina Growers Association advertised for 6,500 farm jobs. They only received 268 applications. Of that, only 245 were hired, and just 163 showed up for the first day's work. More than half quit after the first month, and in the end, only 7 remained throughout the season. Over the years, repeated attempts have been made to recruit domestic helpers. It appears that Americans don't want to perform this type of work, so it appears to me that the migrants weren't taking jobs away from Americans. America is in need of both migrants and immigrants. In my mind, these two words have different definitions. Migrants come to work in America, then return to their homeland. There are policies and laws in place to manage and control this process. The immigrant comes to America to stay and become a citizen. Again, there are laws and policies that define and manage this process. Currently, America is facing many defining issues that could cause the country to fail in the future. One of the major issues facing America is our declining birth rate. Today, the birth rate is approximately 1.6 child per woman. The decline started in the 1960s with a pronounced drop in 2007. America reached a record low number of births in 2023. To maintain our population, we need a birth rate of 2.1 children per woman. The consensus for the decline is related to economics. Family financial limitation, birth control, housing limitations, a lack of quality child care options, and unemployment and job insecurity issues. A declining birth rate leads to an aging population, a shrinking workforce, unstable economic growth, social instability, lower tax revenue, and a strain on the Social Security system. Since the number of American births aren't supporting America's needs, then we need immigrants to sustain our population, in addition to having migrants perform specific work. As I've stated before, immigrants should come here to join our culture, support our ideals, enjoy the rights guaranteed under the United States Constitution. They should provide their credentials and be accepted based upon what they can do for America, and America should appreciate them. We also need migrants. Jobs for migrants are easily defined and should be controlled. The H-2A visa might be too restricted or limiting to get workers we need. I understand the government has set up a department or a committee to review the H-2A visa process to help obtain migrants. But I haven't seen too much of this policy, and maybe it's just a talking point. The farm or company owners who employ migrants should be held accountable to ensure compliance. The employers should sponsor them and provide guarantees that the migrant will comply with laws and expectations and not be a burden to America. We should be thinking outside the box about bringing workers into the country and how to manage them to ensure compliance with our laws and policies. We must also control the admittance of asylum or sanctuary immigrants. We can't allow what has happened over the last 4 years to happen again. Hundreds of thousands of people claim asylum using answers from a cheat checklist online. Open borders are not acceptable. According to the New York Times, there are 9 sanctuary states: California, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Oregon, and Washington. They basically have laws that restrict local law enforcement from helping federal immigration authorities. It's one thing not to help federal authorities, but it's a whole other issue to obstruct and interfere with federal authorities in performing their duties. If these states don't assist federal authorities, then it only makes sense that the feds can use whatever federal powers they have at their disposal to enforce federal law to protect their people and federal property. Unfortunately, both political parties are controlling the illegal immigrant saga. I'm sure with an operation of this size there will be mistakes made, but it seems that politics are at play and each party is throwing rocks at one another rather than cooperating to correct the problem in a meaningful manner. Again, it's always a high school food fight with the existing political parties. I like the days when lawbreakers and only lawbreakers were held accountable for their crimes. Some states are teaching children by action that stealing is okay as long as you don't take too much. Plus, the no cash bail system is, in my opinion, just plain wrong. Why will we allow a perpetrator to be free with no bail to commit the same crime again, or even a worse crime? The states don't say it that way, but that is in fact what they are doing by their actions. We should be enforcing current laws in the books. I believe birthright citizenship is still the law. Therefore, children of illegal immigrants are legally citizens. The illegals are not citizens and should be held accountable. If we don't like a law, then there's a process to change it. Follow the process and get Congress to make an amendment to the law. If one chooses not to comply with the law, then there are consequences. That's just the way it is. By accepting American citizenship, you are accepting our Constitution, our laws, and processes, accepting our way of life, and accepting to show tolerance to others. If you don't like our laws and don't want to get involved to change them legally, then I'm sure you might be happier in North Korea, or in Iran under the Ayatollah, or in Afghanistan under the Taliban. Laws already exist for immigration. Immigrants should only be allowed into the U.S. based upon laws passed by Congress, not by some process developed by some government agency such as Homeland Security, when they signed the Cuba, Haitian, Nicaragua, and Venezuelan parolee process. The I-9 form was created and mandated to be used by the Immigration Reform and Control Act of 1986. It requires all employers in the U.S. to maintain an I-9 form on file for each employee. I know this because I've had to complete and submit the I-9 form for each job I've ever held. Companies that don't abide by the I-9 law should be fined for each violation, heavily. So to add up, stop the political nonsense on both sides of the aisle. Most Americans can see the games you politicians are playing. We need migrants and immigrants that can add value to our country. We need to enforce our immigration laws passed by Congress in a meaningful, consistent manner. If the laws need to be modified, then follow the process to modify them. If we need new laws, then get Congress to enact new laws. We need our borders safe and secure. Criminals belong in jail. Crimes committed in the past are still punishable. There is no I am sorry, please forgive me rule for them. And finally, let's not forget, somewhere in our family history, one way or another, we all came to the U.S. as foreigners. Well, these are my thoughts for today. And again, whether you agree or not, please confirm the information presented. Thank you, and until next time, take care and be safe. Bye. Ooh.